Hey everyone, welcome to Data Driven Value. My name is Mark and I'll be your guide on this channel where we teach you the tools and give you the knowledge to take your financial freedom into your own hands. So without further ado, let's get right into it. So taking a look again just at the crypto market, I'm looking at the overall crypto heat map right here. And we can see that some coins are starting to flip red for the day. We did see quite a nice little recovery there from the altcoins and Bitcoin after a dumpy day yesterday. But yeah, interesting to note that some alts are starting to show weakness. Again, on the hourly, we're looking at everything kind of red, but just a little flat, so nothing too concerning right off the bat. We can flip to our Bitcoin chart and then try to get a good idea of what we might be in for in the near term. So I just pulled a couple levels here, bouncing from this horizontal support as well as from this previously mentioned trend line, which actually goes back to the prior cycle all-time highs as seen there. So good little support there. We were able to bounce from that on that little dump. A lot of liquidations in that level as well. So just nice little reaction. Take a look here. We have some resistance up here from this downsloping trend line. There is a little bit of confluence of resistance kind of in this Fibonacci retracement golden zone up here. Ideally, what I might be looking for as a potential play in the near term as a swing trade, we might bounce up to here, up to resistance. We might get rejected here, and then I'm going to be looking for an entry down here. And so something like that. And if that were to play out, then let's say the top did end up there, that entry would be right in a Fibonacci golden zone. So that's just speculation right now. Until this rally has finished playing out, then we're not going to be able to know where to pull our Fibonacci level, and then we'll adjust that once that the rally has topped out and we have a more accurate idea of where that Fibonacci level is. But essentially, again, looking for price action like this, rejection into resistance, coming down, printing that lower high right there, and then ultimately breaking out of this trend and then continuing higher. So that's kind of the near-term bullish case scenario there that we're looking at. Again, I'm not really looking to enter a position right here. We had our nice little recovery. I did build a swing long position as previously mentioned between 88 and 90,000. So yeah, just riding those buys down here, back up to about 97,000. But yeah, we are coming into that resistance. So just watching how price reacts when we get up to there. And then again, ultimately, I do always recognize the broader market risk are if we are to experience a larger breakdown, in which case I'd be targeting these levels down here, but we're not going to worry about those for now. We can zoom in here a little bit. Let's get rid. So take a look at some of our indicators just to kind of see across the different time frames how we're looking here. Up. So we saw our bounce here from support. Nice, we got a little whale buy indicator flashing there, as well as over here, same thing. Kind of all through this level, we've had some big buys coming in, just showing that the whales or big money are accumulating the dips as they come. So again, this was no different. RSI bottomed out on the 4-hour, kind of similar. We are seeing the MACD histogram quite green here, as well as the two lines kind of curving back over towards each other, and which could be a potential bearish cross. And then also we also see on the big money buy indicator that we are a little overbought as well. It can run a little bit longer, but that's kind of why I might expect something to come up into this resistance and then come back down again, printing that higher low. Ideally, if we're going to enter a swing position here on the higher low, we do want to protect our position with a stop loss below support. So just making sure that if the market is to keep going down in a downtrend on the higher time frame, that we're out of our position before we actually experience any significant downside. But that's only on a swing trade basis. So if you're holding spot bags, like I'm just going to hold those. I have my spot positions, but I also have my short-term swing positions that I will cut at any sign of continued high time frame downtrend, if that makes sense. So we can get rid of those indicators for now. And yeah, again, we're just looking at this. So we might even see if we do get enough momentum breakout, hopefully taking out this high rate here, in which case we will come back, likely back test the breakout point before continuing to new highs. So you can see, rather than entering here kind of this close to resistance and hoping that we catch the right move, it makes more sense, in my opinion, to wait for that breakout and then wait for the retest that always comes. Your entry is going to be a little bit higher than the current price, generally speaking, but it's going to come with a lot less risk because we have a confirmed breakout and a likely continued uptrend. But for now, we're kind of just in this downwards consolidation kind of phase here. It does look a little bit similar to what we experienced previously. Let me just pull that up. So if we look at the 12-hour, kind of down here on this breakout, we came into resistance, and then we just went through this sideways downwards consolidation, tagging that 0.5 Fibonacci level eventually. But essentially, all these little opportunities were great opportunities to build kind of a mid-cycle position, and I'm kind of expecting the same in this kind of price action as well. So I'll be looking to buy dips. Anything kind of 20% is definitely worth 20% or more, definitely worth buying in a bull market, in my opinion, for a cycle hold position. And then kind of in this region, it is worth a swing trade if that is something you do or you're interested in. So then looking at Bitcoin dominance, so just get a little idea of what we might be in for. We do see Bitcoin dominance coming in a bit of a wedge here. Looks to be wanting to break out. We've got our uptrend structure, so higher highs and higher lows, as well as we do have, well, on the 12-hour, we're a little overheated on the MACD, but the RSI is still just above neutral, so we do have room to run. We did have a nice buy indicator there as well as here, so signaling that big money has come back into Bitcoin. Looking at the daily chart, yeah, same thing, about 50 RSI, kind of neutral. Neutral MACD, we did have a bit of a bullish cross there, so looking all right. And same here, we do look like we've had a bit of consolidation on the bigger money buy indicator, so we could be due for a breakout there. And then likely what I would be looking at next is this level of resistance up here. So we might go up to 59%, put in again another lower macro high, but people kind of underestimate the effect that a little 1 or 2% pump in dominance can actually have on alts sometimes. We did see previously that dominance, when it bounced off its lows and it bounced about 3%, it sent alts down about 25%. So just keep in mind, dominance is starting to show some strength. I don't know if it has topped yet for the cycle. We can look at it on a higher time frame here, but essentially, yeah, we do have kind of the start of that downtrend structure, but again, we want another confirmed lower high, but I think we could be due for that kind of in the near future, but we'll follow that as the time goes on. So, getting into some news, obviously, MicroStrategy buying another $243 million of Bitcoin. So they added another 2,530 Bitcoin. Their average price, 95,972, funded by selling 710,000 shares. So they are starting to tap into their ATM program to fund some of these purchases. Interesting to see, not using those convertible notes, but using the ATMs, they are able to actually acquire Bitcoin much more efficiently than having to issue all the convertible notes. They can just kind of issue shares at will when they think it's accretive and then invest that money into the Bitcoin right away. So yeah, their whole stack currently worth over 40 billion. They do have plans to raise up to another 21 billion through equity. So I believe that would be about a 20% dilution or so, something like that. But yeah, as well as fixed income offerings and a new 2 billion preferred stock strategy. So don't expect MicroStrategy to stop acquiring in the future. They're just going to keep doing their thing. got a good cost basis, and the share prices have been doing really well. We can come over here and we'll actually just take a quick look at MicroStrategy, try to see if we can't identify an area where we might find a little opportunity. So looking here, we do see on the weekly, the MACD has just flipped red on the histogram, although the RSI is here at 60 hovering. It does seem to be curling back up. Not really any big buyers coming in on the weekly chart lately. We take a look at the daily, same thing. We aren't seeing the big buyers stepping in like we did over here, but that's not necessarily a negative thing. The MACD is quite oversold, so nice to see there. Looks to be curling back up into a bullish cross, as well as the RSI bouncing off that moving average right there, curling back up, printing that higher low. Same thing on the chart, printing that higher low, looking pretty good. We've got a bit of a trend line right here, but it seems to be attacking that right now. What I might look for in a short-term swing trade, if we come back down and kind of sweep these lows around 285, kind of like that, then I might look to add to my swing position. I did buy a little bit at about 290, so I may look to add a little bit more if we do sweep those lows. You can put a stop loss if you want to protect it. So ideally you want to at least have it under this low here. I would argue if you can drag it kind of and keep it under more support, the better. It's just going to stop us from any volatile move kind of wicking us out of that trade. But yeah, again, that's kind of up to your own discretion. At least having it under a couple levels of support is highly recommended. Just to stop, again, from that volatile nature wicking us out of any trade. You could even look to take profits around here initially at the 786 resistance level. Yeah, not too sure what we're going to see for the future near term, but we might get a little breakout again to there. That might be a nice place just to book some profits and then hold the rest of the trade, moving your stop loss up after you have booked profits. So I like to book profits because nobody ever went broke taking profits. That's a famous saying that a good friend of mine always says, as well as if you don't take profits, the market's going to take them from you. So you see, there was all kinds of people telling me to buy MicroStrategy up here, and looking at this chart, that just didn't really make sense to me. Ideally, if you bought down here, you were taking your profits up here, but all I had to do was just wait patiently, pull that Fibonacci level, and then I entered in the golden zone here. And then so I've got a good risk adjusted position, and then I didn't have to buy up here and then sit through all this bleeding. So little good to note there. MicroStrategy looks to want to break out. If it comes back here, may take a short-term swing position. Otherwise, I might look to add to my long-term bags down here if we have a broader market breakdown. But moving on, we can also take a look, if you haven't before, at the MSTR-tracker.com. So that's the MicroStrategy tracker. It just gives you all kinds of extra information around the share price, the Bitcoin holdings, share metrics and premium, performance metrics. Just gives you a better idea of how to value the company if this is an asset that you're interested in. It's a pretty interesting vehicle for sure, and a very popular one lately. Michael Saylor has definitely been a huge advocate for Bitcoin and the entire space, and it's great to see the company so successful with their strategy. And then again, they've got all kinds of charts and visualizations of the data presented here. So definitely recommend checking out this website, and if you are a MicroStrategy holder or you want to be one. Moving on, kind of here we can see the MicroStrategy effect here kind of spreading into other markets. So we're starting to see other companies kind of adopting this Bitcoin treasury standard, just utilizing their excess cash short term. They see it effectively working for MicroStrategy. So we see here Semler Scientific, which they're actually in robotics and healthcare. They reported significant Bitcoin acquisition. So this company is now holding 2,321 Bitcoin, acquired for 191 million at an average price of 82,000. So pretty substantial amount of Bitcoin for a company that not many people have heard of. You can take a look at Semler here in their recent revenue or recent earnings. Their revenue was up, or not up, was 13.5 million. It was down. Their net income was up, 5.61 net income, as well as a 42% profit margin and a 80-cent earnings per share. So really good earnings from them as well. I think some of that Bitcoin standard that they adopted is reflected in those earnings, but good to see that it's working for them, and it's no surprise that they've added more Bitcoin. They do see that they increased their outstanding shares, so they are using dilutive capital raising vehicles to fund some of these acquisitions. Also interesting to note, between there, again, they acquired, again, there we go, from the at market offering, as well as operating cash flow. So using a bit of a combination of their cash flow and their ATM offerings as well. So yeah, adopted its Bitcoin strategy. So yeah, Semler Scientific's Bitcoin yield was 99.3%. That's a That's a Bitcoin yield is a KPI to help assess the performance of the strategy of acquiring Bitcoin. So essentially, it's just saying whether the way that they raised money was accretive to the actual purchase of their Bitcoin. So in Semler Scientific's case, the Bitcoin yield was 99.3%. Looks really good. But then moving on again. So again, another company that's adopting that Bitcoin standard. We have the Mingxing Group investing another 50 million in Bitcoin. The Mingxing Group, a construction firm based in Hong Kong. So very interesting to see the diversification of companies actually adopting this strategy. We've got like Mara, who's a miner, kind of doing a similar thing, as well as Riot, MicroStrategy. We've got Semler Scientific. We've got Mingxing Group. And I'm sure we've got all sorts of other companies all kind of seeing the success of MicroStrategy. And I keep saying MicroStrategy, and then adopting a similar standard for their own companies. But obviously, Michael Saylor has a very large head start, and his average cost base is far better than these, and holdings much more substantial. So interesting to note nonetheless. But it's interesting also to note with Mingxing Group, they did say explicitly it is intended as a short-term strategy to enhance liquidity and asset value using idle company reserves, and it allows for quick asset disposal if needed for operational purposes. So essentially what they're saying is they will dump on us when they want to. So not really the same as MicroStrategy. They're kind of a buy and hold forever as far as I understand. But we might see some other companies adopting this standard and then experiencing some of the explosive short-term moves in Bitcoin, and therefore they are just forced to kind of take profits. As a more conservative company or investment firm, if you were to see your assets under management double, triple, or even quadruple in such a short amount of time, it would just make sense for you to realize some of those gains. And unfortunately, that will have a bit of a negative effect on the market at that time in the short term. But important to understand that generally markets will continue trending up. So as long as we're buying into strong assets in larger dips, then we know we can position ourselves for that future growth. So moving forward now, we see here Griffin Mining signs definitive agreement for HPC AI asset scalable to 4 gigawatts. So another Bitcoin miner we see that's branching into that AI HPC kind of speculation. Again, none of it is current. It's all kind of staged for the next few years to be built out. No current revenues, but again, you will see some of these companies may capture large premiums if hyperscalers or tech companies do get involved in some of the construction plans or some of these build-outs if they want to purchase the interest in it. So we saw Amazon, who purchased TeraWulf's site, and then ultimately that was blocked in a court proceeding afterwards. But TeraWulf still was able to realize the gain on that site as far as I know. But yeah, and then we also saw Core Scientific and TeraWulf both landing pretty solid AI deals, as well as Hut 8 is developing a $12 billion data center for AI HPC with $10 billion funded by the clients. So there's definitely tons of interest in the AI space. and the HPC, and we see hyperscalers and tech stocks willing to pay a premium, as well as even willing to partner with the Bitcoin miners just to secure that infrastructure ahead of their competition. So looking here, we see 850 industrial zoned acreage, 4 gigawatts total capacity, 130 megawatts by the end of 2026. So that's the key thing to really note is the potential is huge, but we're only really going to see an energized capacity of roughly 130 megawatts anticipated by the end of 2026. So when we do factor this in as we get more details, maybe we'll do a little deep dive on the company. But we will just want to keep that in mind that it's not going to be the full 4 gigawatts. I do often see a lot of people kind of pricing in these speculative pipelines. And to an extent, I do believe it makes sense. But I don't put a lot of weight kind of into what is promised is going to be the max potential. Getting to actually 4 gigawatts of total capacity is going to be a long journey, and it's going to be full of ups and downs and all kinds of regulatory hurdles. But I'm sure it's possible, and they have the pipeline, so with the right funding, I'm sure it can get done as well. So that'll be interesting to follow going forward. Yeah, we do see this in the captured industrial site, Southern Alberta, expected to close in or before April 2025. We see estimates of 1.5 million annual revenue per megawatt, but we also see VanEck suggesting 9 million per megawatt for AI HPC. So we could look at maybe taking an average kind of between the two. Maybe we look at about $4 or $5 million per megawatt of annual revenue, looking at AI or HPC. But again, that's kind of just assuming full capacity, 5 billion of annual revenue. And then we see here 5+ trillion cubic feet contingent natural gas resources, initially 100 megawatts generation capacity, scalable up to 1 gigawatts, and then the projected power cost of 3 cents per kilowatt. And if that's a very attractive power cost, excuse me. And they do believe that the acquisition represents a transformative moment for Griffin as they aggressively expand into the AI HPC infrastructure market. Combination of dual natural gas supply, on-site carbon sequestration, and abundant water access makes it one of the few locations in North America with the critical elements needed for large-scale AI. And the total consideration for the transaction was $27 million Canadian. So that's another thing to note. If this is 3 cents Canadian, that's also going to be a very attractive power rate because our exchange rate is pretty bad right now. But interesting to see here from Griffin Mining, and we'll follow them going forward and maybe even do a little bit of a deep dive and see if there's some value there. Next up, we see Applied Digital agrees to build a partnership with Macquarie Asset Management, funding up to $5 billion to drive HPC growth. So Macquarie Asset Management will invest up to $900 million in the company's Ellendale high-performance computing data center, provide an MAM right to invest up to additional $4.1 billion. So initially $900 million with the option to invest an additional $4.1 billion if they want to exercise that option. Interesting, again, we see Applied Digital has basically been a data center company. Not the strongest miner. Generally, they were hosting kind of miners for other companies. Interesting to see them again further another company going into that AI HPC, and just another example of the billions and billions of dollars that are flowing into this space. And then here, but AI data centers, so another report that AI data centers will create $583 billion in new IT networking and energy business in 2030. Again, just looking at such firms such as Google, Microsoft, OpenAI, we also see Amazon, CoreWeave, Core42, even more, Boosteroid, all sorts of these AI hyperscalers, cloud computers, HPC computing businesses. Everyone is looking for data centers and they can't build them fast enough, and the Bitcoin miners just happen to have been building these data centers for years. Just like in the case of Core Scientific, where they're transitioning their current data centers to HPC for Core Scientific. And pretty interesting to see the premium that some of these Bitcoin miners have earned on their shares just from kind of diversifying into this new and exciting revenue stream. All right, moving on. We have a little good note kind of here. Won't have a big really effect on anything in the near term. But for those of us who are in the Bitcoin miners, we all know that those stocks are very heavily shorted, and we do know that the share prices are likely manipulated by these shorts because of the relatively low market caps. But we do see here a new rule from the SEC on short selling. Essentially, managers holding short positions exceeding 10 million or 2.5% of a company's shares must file Form SHO on a monthly basis. So short selling, they're often less transparent. It makes it difficult for investors and regulators to detect potential market manipulation, and this lack of insight has led to situations that destabilize the market. So basically, every month, all of these people who are shorting are going to have to disclose it. It's going to be a lot more clear. We're going to know kind of who's in the control of the prices and see who might actually be manipulating those prices, especially in some of the assets like the Bitcoin miners. Again, it's not going to have a huge effect on actual short price or actual share price, but it's just going to give us a little bit more transparency, which is always nice. Moving on here, a bit more news, speculation of course, but we see here from Cointelegraph, Donald Trump could issue crypto executive orders on the first day. This is speculation, but there is expectation from the Washington Post to sign an executive order repealing the SAB accounting policy, so the SAB accounting policy that requires banks holding crypto to list the digital assets as a liability. So previously, a lot of banks, they wouldn't really be, well, a lot of banks wouldn't be interested in holding Bitcoin or crypto on their balance sheets in the first place, but that's kind of just due to a due diligence and kind of a risk factor, just due to the stigma behind the whole industry. That's kind of changing as time goes on and with the continued adoption of the ETFs. But it's nice to see that at least the Biden administration that had the choke point. So prior to then, they essentially were attacking all sorts of different tech companies and crypto-related businesses, and a lot of banks too, preventing the banks from allowing their customers to access crypto and these other services. Yeah, so nice to see that hopefully he does follow through with this promise and repeals that accounting policy. They also report that the crypto industry officials were pushing Trump to issue crypto-related executive orders within the first 100 days, and some are expected on the first day. Then we have here David Sack, who hosted a luncheon for tech execs and government officials. He said Trump would revoke Biden's sweeping 2023 AI executive order, and saying AI must operate in a manner that advances equity. So interesting to see here. We may see a bit of policy change, hopefully, regarding crypto pretty quick as soon as the administration comes in. Another good news for the industry, we just see Coinbase wins partial victory as court orders SEC to justify rejection of their crypto rulemaking petition. So here we see the Third Circuit, or the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Third Circuit, ruled in favor of Coinbase, found the SEC's rejection of Coinbase's request for clear crypto regulations was arbitrary and capricious. Yes, it was. The court did not mandate the SEC to create new rules, requiring instead only further justification. Basically, we see that noted the rejection was conclusory, while Judge Stefanos warned the SEC about its enforcement-heavy approach, which he argued targeted the entire industry. Lots of that can be brought back to kind of that choke point 2.0 that I just referenced earlier. It refrained from ordering the SEC to issue new rules, but it did direct the SEC to explain its position on crypto regulations more clearly, and it did add to the scrutiny of the SEC's approach to regulation, again known as regulation by enforcement. So they're just out there suing everyone and anyone, but Gary Gensler's on his last legs, and the SEC is looking like it's got a new crypto-friendly head that might be coming in soon. So again, we see these several ongoing legal battles with these major companies. We can maybe expect those to be resolved once we have some more regulatory clarity in the coming months. We see here the Treasury pick. Scott Bessent will divest BlackRock's Bitcoin ETF. So this is just a bit of FUD that I saw somewhere. People were sharing this saying, oh, it's gonna tank the price. But just to note, Scott Bessent, he's an investor in this group, or he's a executive in this group, and he's manager, and he needs to divest the assets, including his stake in the IBIT Bitcoin ETF. This is just because he does not want any conflict of interest when he does take his new position. So he's not dumping it because he doesn't believe in Bitcoin. He just he has to divest these assets so that he doesn't have any conflict of interest. So totally understandable there. If anyone tries to share that around as FUD, then I would just tell them to go stick it somewhere. Next up, we've got Howard Marks. So again, this can be seen as a little bit of FUD, but I see it kind of more. I like to take a little bit of the extremes from both ends. So when we look at the bull case, kind of all these companies buying up here, we also got to look at the bear case, which is some of the worrying economic factors. So we do see that the stock markets run into a bit of a little hiccup. It's not out of the ordinary, and kind of more around the fact that the Fed likely won't be cutting rates in the near term. But we do see Howard Marks here, one of the most respected value investors, foresaw the dot-com bubble. He also foresaw the COVID crash and the 2008 housing crash. He's seeing some cautionary signs, saying investors clearly shouldn't be indifferent to today's market valuation. So a lot of people are valuing companies on a very forward-looking basis, especially companies like Nvidia. And it's great and all, but that is assuming that they actually meet those targets in the future. And some of the targets have gotten a little unsustainable, in my opinion, in the long term. And valuations may have gotten a little bit overextended. So while I do believe that valuations may be a little out of whack, the market can also stay irrational longer than we can stay solvent. So it could entirely just keep riding up for months, even a couple like years technically, with healthy corrections here and there. But essentially it is something I do keep in the back of my mind. So I like to keep a bit of a cash position, and I call that my black swan cash position. Essentially, if we see any kind of recession or major stock market correction to the tune of 20 to 30%, that's when I deploy that black swan cash position. And it just makes sure that I'm always able to take advantage of those, because those often end up being pretty generational buying opportunities. We can see the S&P's current price to earnings ratio is 22, which is typically higher price to earnings ratios lead to lower returns in the long run, according to history. This level would translate into the 10-year returns between plus 2% and minus 2%. It is also possible that the correction on the multiple is compressed into a short period of time. I would think we would probably lean towards this, where we get just a big quick flush of capital out of the market, and then we continue on our way, kind of similar to the last two corrections. I don't believe it would be as fast and as V-shaped of a recovery as the COVID correction, just because of the stimulus that was involved then. But again, that's just why we have our cash position, and we're ready. If we do get an opportunity like this, we can take advantage of it. And then also looking again at our treasury yield spread. So we have the 10-year and the 3-month. Typically when these uninvert, so you can see right here it inverted, and you can see right here we've now uninverted. You can see marked in the kind of faded white here, or the gray, it marks all these little dips, so you can kind of see the uninversion actually coincides with a lot of market corrections. So interesting to note that we have uninverted now, so we may be due for a correction kind of in the coming months, whether that's 6 months away or 12 months away or 18 months away. No one can really predict that, but just definitely interesting to note that that has uninverted. So we are keeping that in mind, and we'll be watching the SPY a little bit closer from here on out. And that's about it for the news and the charts. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you got something of value. Thank you for joining the channel. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, and share. You can follow me on Twitter or X. And as always, thank you so much, guys. Take care, and I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.